Sassari, but I belong also, I'm teaching here now in Bangkok at Thammasat University of Design. And it's my pleasure to be part of this this conference. I really thank my colleagues that invite me to join it. I hope that you already enjoy the conference. The topic that I will try to introduce to you today is I'm an urban planner. I'm working in urban planning and risk disaster mitigation and management. I'm working in citizens' participation in participatory planning and design, participatory design. And I'm also a gaming simulation user and designer. So this is just what is my interest, and the reason why I'm really interested in the world of virtual reality is because as a planner, we are often dealing with the fact that working in with the complex problems and system, we use, of course, quantitative methods, but more and more we try to use qualitative methods that are not so explicitly acknowledged, like tools that can help us to acquire the needed information and, as I said, dealing with complex problems. So another thing that we have to remind is the fact that urban planning in the last 30 years was shifted from the paradigm of omnicomprehensive and traditional master plan making to policy analysis and more and more aware and concerning of the human social system. So in this way, as Dandekar pointed out, the emphasis is shifted to methods that found useful either in observation of system and how they function, or in developing strategies for intervention. Sorry, mistake. Many of these methods are what we referred as the qualitative one, as I said, and they are used to obtain information about not only physical aspect, but also social aspect. And when we think about why we use qualitative methods, why we have to rely, because when we talk and we deal with the complex system as the urban one, as the cities, as the territory, we take into account the concept of subjectivity, because as we say, the integration, the interrelation, the interference of those systems has to do with subjectivity, and the subjectivity deal immediately with these two other problems. That is the fact that we are suffering of data scarcity, even if now there is, of course, all the debate about big data, but it depends on what we are looking for and what we are planning for. And the other thing is about the time. We do not have time to deal with proper process and procedures of quantitative methods. So we have to try to understand how to use the qualitative one. And we developed along the time a way how to use them in more effective way to develop our tools, but not only, also how to develop in a way to communicate in a more efficient way. The qualitative methods are used almost in three different domains: in the study of built form, the study of urban human interaction, in the study of planning process and organization structures. And especially those one, meanwhile, the study of built form somehow benefits from the quantitative methods and is the domain of the physical data. The other two can, vary and can encounter some problems. So um, um, the methods in our case overlap in what they can be used to achieve, but where are applied these quantitative methods to a city. And the city, I use this often, this illustration image from Kasmar, Matthias, and Marian, because it's somehow a metaphor how we think about an urbanization that everybody knows right now is more accommodating more than 50% of the world population. And we have to remember that the city is a phenomenon that has the spatial continuity with the past. So it means that it's not there is a continuity in this when we look at this transformation first. The other fact is what Martinotti said here, that the city is a production, but it's not for sure that who is producing it is also aware of what is the production, and also that can recognize him herself in this product. So another topic that more and more is affecting us is that, as someone said, we change the structure of our planet more quicker than how we change the structure of our mind. And for instance, I'm working, as I said, with disaster, with disastrous events. And if we look to the topic of the water, everybody knows that the risk of in different at different level and for different reasons, the risk that is connected with the water is worldwide increasing. Being the climate change and flooding and heavy rain, whatever, being the way how we manage it, being the scarcity of the drinkable, but let's say this is a topic that we are dealing with. And back to the fact that there is, let's say, an opening, and as I said before, a different approach, different paradigm that we are looking to the urban planning that is taking into account the concept of transformation. Why the urban transformation? Because this is clear, is a dynamic situation, is a complex system that, being complex, is also dynamic. And the dynamic and the transformation cannot be dealt only with looking to the physical one, but as I said, we had to deal with the different environment. And actually, when we talk about urban planning, we don't talk only about the urban physical spatial plan, but we talk about urban policies, we talk about the norms and the rules that have to be applied, we talk about the strategies, and last but not least, we more and more are aware of the importance of a neglected nature and environment. So, for instance, if we talk, we were saying before that I talk about disaster, and disaster happen more and more frequently. And what is important actually is how to increase awareness, perception of the risk using different approaches, tools, and strategies. If we talk about how to increase the resilience through urban planning, we need to have a forms of sustainable planning. And therefore, this is just one of the many that was made by me just to understand how is, the complex system became complex, and where is the neglected word of participation that is here, that is more and more taking, participation is not a new concept. It's more or less more than 50 years that we work with this, but nevertheless, it's important to understand how we apply this concept and this method, and because this is the only way how to support form of sustainable planning. So when we talk about it, we consider what is called the social learning process that is needed in order to increase the resilience of societies, but also the physical system. And the characteristic of this process has, the capacity through the community to analyze, consider, vision, and build by themselves of their own future. And also the capacity to understand, to frame a correct perception of the physical possible and the contemporary world and the possible social development. In my case is also, but not only for the case of disaster, to keep and preserve memory of those developments is quite important. It's important to understand how to develop the future. And also to maintain the proper view and perception in my case of the hazard and the risk probability, but the proper view of perception of what is the nowadays the world and how we can deal with its transformation. So when we talk about urban planning, we consider 3 different phases, from the diagnosis, that is the first one, through the design, let's say, phase, that is the vision, the goals, the strategies, the action, the projects, the plans. Through that, we go to the operational one phase, that is the implementation. But each of these is, let's say, crossed by the participation and sharing. Sharing because another concept that we apply is the one of the complexity and the small world, because we talk a lot about networking, and it has not only to do with the network at the infrastructural level, but it has also to look at the behavioral model and how to improve the mutual cooperation between individual nodes and how to make changes permanently. This is just one note that I don't know if it's funny or not, but I used for many years to talk about viruses and enzymes when I was talking about the city, because I was conceiving the city as a sort of places where the destruction can be beneficial sometimes because they create new forms. Like, there are some elements that can reproduce themselves quickly and inefficient and in a good way. But let's say what is important here is to understand, for me, that is linked with the participation, that even when, and this is important for the urban system and participation, even when the cooperation gives a minor personal payoff, the final result is a major payoff for the whole system. And this is to be taken into consideration when we transform the urban space. Another topic that is quite important when we talk about cities, and I'm sure that this community knows quite well, is the concept of smart city. But would be the future of the city really be smart? This is, this is quite debatable because, let's say, we have to do, the city is composed by different level, different layer, different what we call ecosystem of actors, policies, stakeholders, and the most important thing is that this requires a lot of negotiation and coordination. So the future of the city depends on how well we take this situation and as an opportunity to reshape, remake, readdress it. We have to remember that cities as territory are often complex, are almost always complex, but incomplete, and some are complex but overcomplicated. And they are composed by more elements that any design can handle, and participatory process has to deal with it. So how, let's say, deal with participation we then embedded in this complexity element or nature of the city, complex nature of the city, is a challenge for us. Because sometimes we think that top-down approach is bad, and normally it is, because it's imposed, and then often it doesn't work. But also the bottom-up could be, lay in the state of activism without any further really big let's say result, future development of this. So there is an action, is fine, then it expires, and everything had happened. I'm thinking about a lot of tactical urbanism that are really good, but they stay where they are. They don't change really the system, how was previewed. So normally when we talk about participation, we are working in this way, top down. We are the expert and we know how to implement things. We work with the expert politicians. We, of course, we inform you, we tell you what is to do, etc. But unfortunately, we left here a lot of population, a lot of group of interest or stakeholders that are left behind. They're not listen, and that it creates a lot of conflicts. Meanwhile, let's say this is a model where policy and the economy considered elements of the system, instead to frame them so they are embedded into the system, and the future is not separated from the future of the system itself. In this case, in this vision, let's say the participatory process tend to develop towards community planning, while the plans, as here, are nevertheless provided by interdisciplinary group of experts. So as long as the community find a way how to increase their adaptability, they can cope, and they can cope in more reactive and sometimes pro-reactive way to the changes that can affect them, and stimulate to find innovative strategies, and also tend to understand how to promote self-organization that is the base for the resilience of urban system. Cities are living space of organized local society, and to design the city is an activity that brings opportunity to envision new configuration of physical space through communication, interactive process, and in which the quality and desirability of the design increases with the improvement of the organizational behavior of the whole system. So, quoting Toffler, by making imaginative use of change to channel change, we can not only spare ourselves the trauma of future shock, we can reach out and humanize distant tomorrow. What is the image of the city? Let's say visionary, for instance, through this new Athens chart by an Italian architect, planner, and artist, Andrea Branzi. This is, the city could be a sort of favelas, high-tech favelas, with a computer or as a computer every 20 square meters, a city as a cosmic hospitality, place of cosmic hospitality, like a sort of fulfilled micro climatized environment, like a genetic laboratory, like a living plankton, like an application of weak urbanization models through blurring and crowded borders that can be crossed, and through the realization of light reversible infrastructures. And the 10th is the big transformation, the large transformation has to be done through micro projects. And here, in this vision, let's say, in this domain comes the relationship with the virtual world, with the simulation. We simulate, we as designers simulate, is our way of doing things. We simulate because in the moment, not only we are working with computer-aided design, software, whatever, 3D modeling, but we, in the moment that we idealize something and we draw, we use just a pencil, we create virtual worlds. And in these virtual worlds that are virtual objects, that are ontologically subjective and epistemologically objective, quoting Klabbers. And why I'm quoting is here, even if it's a bit dated, especially for the technology, is these 2 points that important to understand that the objects and their surroundings, landscape and architecture, being virtual, exist with full rights as visual, or more general, as sensory objects. Keep in mind, because there are a lot of 3D program that generates, for instance, how 3D from a map, so we can recreate quickly how this neighborhood can be transformed and so on. And it affects the perception, but it affects also the way of thinking of the participants in this process, and for us as a designer. Another thing is that I'm not talking about industrial design, but I'm talking about urban planning and urban design. We witness, and let me say, I still witness a lot of business-driven technology that put little time devoted to develop the necessary theoretical and methodological framework for the user-centered design, use and assessment, in this case of digital games, but we say in the virtual world. I can give you, and this is the last one, an example. Many years ago, this is an old gaming simulation that was designed thinking to Venice, with the Venice not as a utopia, because Venice was designed as a physical city of Venice, but the capacity to construct an ideal city that doesn't exist, but that can be created by the participation through the computer-aided support and the software support, through the process of gaming by the participants, to the process and the workshop, to design a desirable Venice. I have to say, being one of the authors of the last version in 1998, now it's difficult because it was DOS-based, and then there were problems of running the software actually, but it was based in a model, as happen often, okay, of the city, real one. So statistical data, processing the historical, the statistical series, array of data. The system was the one of the election for the mayor. The budget was the one that was that came from the researcher. I worked 1 year just to set the data for this game. And then some projects that were the result of a Delphi conducted with the different experts that helped me to build this kind of actions that can be put into to implement in order to build this ideal Venice. The reflection after so many years is that the designer design a city that it doesn't exist, but the designer designed a city that the players played, and they created always the city that exists here and now. So the player, when they play Venice, they created a sort of Disneyland for rich or for the mass, doesn't matter, but the Disneyland where the resident has a little bit to do with, and you know, building some bubbles where to put, for instance, the students, the tourists, the stakeholder, etc. And unfortunately, is what is happening in Venice. And I ask myself, why, being the opportunity to use this kind of tools that recreate, let me say, not virtual reality, of course, but a virtual world, why it didn't benefit? I mean, we played with residents, with citizens, we played with students, we played with politicians, we played with experts, but it didn't offer a real escape. So how could let's say virtual reality help us to design a model of the world, a model of the system, or how to help us to solve problems in contingencies like conflict or efficiency? This is the question. But questions from you are welcome, and answer, I hope, will follow. Thank you so much.